I thought visiting the hospital at night would be quiet, but the halls echoed with footsteps, and every room seemed to be waiting for me. The hospital doors slid shut behind me with a hollow thud, and the sound seemed to echo much longer than it should have. Outside, the city had been buzzing, cars hissing along wet asphalt and neon signs bleeding into puddles. But inside, it was sterile silence. It wasn't the kind of silence that brought comfort. It was too thick, like a sheet pressed against my ears, muting the world and amplifying the faint thump of my heartbeat. The reception area greeted me with a half-light glow. A single fluorescent bulb above the desk buzzed softly, its flicker painting the room with a nervous pulse. The desk itself was manned by no one. No security guard scrolling through his phone, no nurse tapping at a keyboard. Just a half-empty mug of coffee, its contents dried into a ring, and a stack of files splayed open as if someone had left mid-sentence. The chair behind the desk was pushed back slightly, angled toward the main corridor, like whoever had been sitting there had risen, suddenly and never returned. I stepped deeper into the hospital, my shoes squeaking against polished tile. The sound carried too far, bouncing down the corridors and returning to me distorted, as though the hospital itself was repeating my movements. The walls were pale, once white, now tinged with the grey of years. Posters for flu vaccines and safety protocols hung crookedly, their corners peeling. A row of wheelchairs sat parked against the wall. At first glance, they were normal cold steel frames, plastic footrests, frayed fabric seats. But under the flickering light, their shadows stretched along the floor, twisting into shapes too long, too sharp, like skeletal hands clawing across the tiles. The smell was the worst part, not the acrid sting of antiseptic I'd expected, but something faint, something sweet and rotten, like fruit left too long in a sealed drawer. Halfway down the hall, I froze. There it was, faint at first, but unmistakable. Beep, beep, the sound of a heart monitor. I turned my head, scanning the corridor. The glow of the exit sign buzzed red at the far end, and doors lined each side of the hallway. All was slightly open, curtains pulled back, beds visible in the dark. Empty beds. No patients. No sheets disturbed. No machines powered on. Yet the sound continued. Beep, beep. A steady pulse that seemed to grow louder with each hesitant step I took. I stopped at room 304. The door was half open, a pale slice of green light spilling onto the floor. My hand shook as I pushed it wider, the hinges groaning as though the door resented being disturbed. Inside the room was pristine. Bed made perfectly, corners tucked hospital tight. The nightstand empty. A curtain pulled halfway across the window revealed the parking lot outside dark. Deserted, but next to the bed, a monitor pulsed to life. Its screen glowed sickly green, jagged lines crawling steadily upward with each beep. Only there were no wires, no patient, no heartbeat to measure. I stepped closer. The line spiked as if reacting to me, then dipped into a flat line. My breath caught in my throat. The steady drone filled the room, long and unbroken until... Suddenly, the line jumped again, forming sharp peaks. Not a patient's rhythm, not a human rhythm. It felt reactive, alive. For a split second, I swore I heard something behind the beep, a whisper buried under static, so faint I couldn't tell if it was the machine or my mind. And then the monitor froze on the glowing green line. The peaks warped, rearranging into shapes. Letters, welcome. I stood inside room 304 as though crossing a threshold into another world. The air felt different here, denser, almost syrupy, clinging to my skin. My lungs struggled to pull it in, every breath a little harder than the last. The thermostat still blinked a comforting 22 degrees Celsius, but the chill in the room contradicted it. My breath misted faintly in the glow of the monitor, which continued its unnatural beep, beep, beep. I approached the bed. The sheets were tucked with geometric precision, sharp corners so tight they could cut skin. But as my fingers brushed the fabric, I froze. The linen was warm body warm. I pressed down. The mattress yielded with the weight of an indentation, perfectly shaped as though someone invisible lay there, chest rising and falling, leaving the faintest heat trapped in the fibers. A shudder rattled my bones. I pulled my hand away, but the warmth clung to my skin like residue. Something shifted near the nightstand. A sharp scrape against tile. My eyes darted down. A scalpel dotted lay just out of reach, its thin blade catching the green glow from the monitor. It wasn't clean. Rust mottled the metal, brownish red stains clinging to the grooves of its handle. The smell hit me next, metallic, faint, but fresh. I bent down, hesitant fingers stretching toward it. The moment I touched the cold steel, the monitor screamed. A long, piercing beer hip exploded through the room, shaking the walls. The green line shot flat and steady across the screen. I recoiled, the scalpel slipping from my grip and clattering across the tiles. The sound was deafening, echoing far too long, bouncing through the hospital as if the building itself was hollow. And then, footsteps, slow, deliberate. Just outside the room, the sound grew louder with each step. Leather against tile, dragging faintly as though the weight of the figure was uneven. My heart hammered in my throat. I turned to the door, watching the sliver of hallway light. A shadow passed by long, bent, its outline broken. The proportions were wrong. Shoulders hunched too high, head tilted too far, limbs crooked like broken marionette strings. The footsteps stopped. I held my breath. My chest burned. The silence stretched into eternity. Then, without warning, the monitor resumed. Beep, beep, beep. Calm, steady, as if nothing had happened. But the line was no longer jagged peaks. It was letters. You shouldn't be here. The words glowed faintly on the screen, then twitched, distortions crawling over them, like the machine was fighting itself. The letters flickered again. Get out. I staggered back, my heel hitting the scalpel on the floor. The metal scraped underfoot, shrill and desperate. The shadow outside the door shifted. A hand, if it was a hand, pressed against the frosted glass panel. Long, skeletal fingers, each bending at unnatural angles, dragged downward. The screech of nail against glass cut into me. Then the sound stopped. The hand was gone. The door stood still. The hallway beyond, silent. I forced myself to crouch, retrieving the scalpel again. My hands trembled violently, but I gripped it tighter, as though the blade might protect me. The monitor pulsed once more. Beep, beep. This time, though the rhythm was wrong, too fast, too loud, it matched my heartbeat. The hallway outside room 304 no longer felt like part of a hospital. It was too long, too still, too symmetrical. I knew this floor. I had walked it before. The nurse's station should have been at the corner. The vending machines humming faintly, the smell of burnt coffee lingering. But now only silence, endless fluorescent lights buzzing, and doors that seemed to copy and paste themselves down into. Infinity.301, 302, 303, 304, the numbers repeated, stretching into the distance. I turned sharply, certain I'd miss. Behind me, the same row stretched backward, perfectly mirrored. And there, again room 304, its crooked metal plate hanging, the faint grease smear across the frosted glass. My skin prickled. I was surrounded by the same room, multiplied. My footsteps echoed unnaturally loud. Each tap of my shoes came back a beat too late, as though someone else was walking just behind me, mimicking my every step, but never catching up. I tried to outpace it. My breath quickened, steps faster. The echo quickened too, a hollow mimicry that made the hairs on my neck rise. Then I saw it, a gurney left in the middle of the corridor, blocking the path. The wheels were locked, rust streaking down the chrome legs. The mattress was torn open, yellow foam spilling out like exposed organs. On the pillow, placed with surgical precision, rested a scalpel. The blade gleamed under the flickering fluorescent bulb as I inched closer. The light above the gurney buzzed louder and louder until, with a sharp pop, it died, leaving that stretch of hallway in pitch black dark. From the darkness, the monitor began. Beep, beep. The sound shouldn't have traveled so far, but it filled the corridor like a pulse inside my skull. I followed it, heart pounding in sync, until I found another open door. Inside, a bed. Sheets tucked tight. Mattress depressed slightly, as though someone had just lain there. No one visible, yet the warmth in the air was undeniable. Clinging to my skin, beside it, a heart monitor glowed, wires dangling uselessly, not connected to anything. Still, the jagged green line pulsed steadily. Letters formed, one by one. Lay down. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the doorframe. My throat was dry. Words caught somewhere between lungs and lips. I turned back into the hallway and stopped cold. Every door along the corridor now stood open. Each room was a clone, a bed with a subtle indentation, a scalpel resting neatly on a pillow, a monitor beeping in time with my pulse. The sound layered, multiplied, until the corridor itself seemed to beat like a colossal, mechanical heart. The smell hit next, sharp antiseptic, metallic blood, rusting steel. It grew stronger with every breath, until nausea curled deep in my stomach. Movement flickered at the edge of my vision. I turned to slow. A figure shuffled across the corridor far ahead, dressed in a faded patient gown, bare feet dragging against the tiles, head bowed. Relief almost came. Another living person. But when it turned its head slightly, I froze. Its face was smooth. No eyes, no mouth. Skin stretched tight where features should have been. And yet I heard it breathing. Wet, ragged, human. I pressed against the wall, my chest heaving, trying to stay quiet. The faceless figure shuffled closer, its steps matching the tempo of the monitors. Beep, step, beep, step. It passed by one of the open rooms and paused, its head tilted toward the monitor inside. The screen twitched violently, the green line spiking, letters bleeding into view. Welcome back. Every monitor in the ward flatlined at once. The scream of the machines split my skull. The letters burned across every glowing screen. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. The figure's head snapped toward me. I didn't move, couldn't move. Its faceless skin seemed to pulse, almost stretching toward me. Then the fluorescent lights flickered, violently, and it was gone. The silence after was worse than the noise. Behind me, the echo of footsteps returned. Closer this time. The corridor folded around me like a ribcage. The tiled walls pressed closer, seams groaning, light tubes snapping one by one until sparks hissed at my shoulders. I tried to run, but the floor beneath my shoes rippled soft, like flesh instead of linoleum. Every step squelched. The gurney appeared without sound, rolling forward from the dark, wheels turning in perfect silence. It stopped inches from my chest. On its mattress lay the three things I had been forced to notice since stepping into this nightmare. A scalpel, its blade gleaming, wet though untouched. A heart monitor, unplugged, yet still pulsing green spikes. A pillow, the fabric indented by a missing skull, stained faintly yellow with sweat dot. As I stared, the monitor flickered and spat jagged words. "Lie down." The scalpel trembled, vibrating on the steel tray. I turned to flee, but the corridor had shifted again. Behind me, doors had melted into the wall, leaving only smudges of faded numbers. 301, 302, 303, 304, all bleeding into one another like bruises. When I touched the wall for balance, my palms smeared across handprints, dozens layered atop one another. They were mine. Every angle, every press, every frantic claw. Old, faded, as though I had run this same corridor many times before. My legs buckled. The air was heavy with antiseptic and copper. Then the wheels squeaked at last. The gurney rolled forward on its own, pushing me, herding me into a room marked 304 inside. The hospital had decayed into something anatomical. The walls pulsed like lungs, plaster bending with each inhale. The floor was draped in sodden surgical sheets that squished underfoot. Rusty for poles leaned like gravestones. Above them hung a surgical lamp, its beam flickering cold white and then blood-red dot. And in the center, the operating table. The straps dangled open, but their ends curled toward me as if eager hands awaited. The smell of scorched flesh clung to the air. The monitor here spasmed to life, green lines thrashing until they formed a sentence. The hospital remembers. I staggered back, but the door was gone. Smooth tiles sealed me in. Then I saw the body. It lay on the table, strapped at the wrists and ankles. The face turned toward me, my own. My chest rose shallowly, eyes glassy, lips trembling with the beginning of a scream. The shadows at the far end of the room thickened, folding inward. The faceless, patient figure emerged, shoulders hunched, gown dragging along the floor. In its hand glinted the scalpel. It reached the table, raised the blade, and pressed it to the chest of my double, and I felt it. The metal bit into me, real and sharp. A line of fire opened across my skin, even though I stood yards away. My knees hit the floor. I clawed at my shirt, and when I pulled it up, blood was welling in the exact place the scalpel traced my double sternum. The monitor shrieked, the green line spasming upward like a scream. Words carved themselves in furious spikes. "You are the patient." The faceless figure bent low over the body, where its head should have been, skin stretched and pulsed like latex. Slowly, impossibly, a mouth tore itself open across that blank flesh, wet, grinning. Too wide it whispered with my own voice, "Scalpel," and the blade sank deeper into the body. Pain split through me. I collapsed onto the floor, my cheek pressed against the cold tile. Blood pooled warm beneath me, though no wound should have existed. The lights overhead stuttered violently, the lamp above the table flickering like a heartbeat. The operating room groaned. Walls buckled outward, ceiling bulged. I realized the hospital was closing itself around me, becoming the surgical theater, turning every corridor, every room into one endless operation. The monitor's final message pulsed, relentless. You will not leave the table. Darkness swallowed me as the scalpel came down again. I came to on the cold pavement, gasping like I had been drowning. The hospital loomed behind me, its windows nothing but black sockets. My legs trembled. Somehow, impossibly, I had escaped. The air tasted different, wetter, but the smell clung to me. Antiseptic, copper, the ghost of burned flesh. I pressed my hand to my chest. Bandages were wrapped across the wound I had felt opened on the table, neat and tight, secured with practiced hands. I didn't remember anyone touching me. I didn't remember leaving. I staggered toward the streetlights. They flickered as I passed, buzzing, humming, faint like dying heartbeats. Then I saw it, in the glass of a shop front. My reflection wavered. At first it was me, pal, shaking, haunted. Then it blinked out of rhythm. Its chest rose when mine fell. Its lips moved, though mine was still. Slowly, with unbearable patience, it lifted its arm. On its wrist was a white hospital band. I froze. I looked down. The same band clung to my own skin, tight as a tourniquet. Plastic creased and blood-speckled. The name smudged, letters running like ink in water, but still readable. My name beneath it, date of admission. Tomorrow, the band cut deeper, the harder I pulled, digging into the flesh as though welded to bone. From behind me came the sound. Wheels, slow. Squeaking wheels. I turned. A gurney slid across the asphalt, perfectly clean, as though it had just been scrubbed. The sheets were folded, immaculate. Beside it, a heart monitor rolled on its cart, unplugged, untethered, yet alive with pulsing green light. The line spiked and curved into letters. Welcome back. The words bled into symbols, the same jagged glyphs I had seen carved into the hospital walls. My vision swam. The world bent when I blinked. I was no longer standing. The sky tilted above me. Cold steel pressed against my spine. Straps tightened over my wrists, over my ankles, drawn by hands I couldn't see. I tried to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. The gurney rolled, smooth, unstoppable. The pavement gave way to linoleum. The night dissolved into fluorescent light. The hospital's entrance swallowed me whole. Doors sighing shut like lungs. I was back inside. Corridors stretched on, endless. Room numbers bled together. 301, 302, 303, 304, 304. Monitors lined the walls, all showing the same thing. My body twitching on the gurney. Mouth open in a scream I hadn't given yet. One screen flickered into a different message. You were never discharged. Another glowed. You never left. The wheels squeaked louder. My pulse beat with the monitor's shriek. At the far end of the hallway, doors waited. They slid open, revealing not the outside world, but the operating room once more. Surgical lamps gleamed red. Instruments glistened wet. And waiting in the center of it all was the faceless figure, gown torn, scalpel gleaming. It raised its hand in a surgeon's salute. The monitor at my side pulsed one final time. The hospital remembers. The doors closed, and I knew I would never leave.